There's something about this time of year. The air changes, the light shifts, and suddenly the world starts letting go. Hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of Grace, Grit, and Grounds. If you're like me, you can feel that change creeping in. The mornings bite a little harder, the days shorten, and somewhere between the back to school rush and the first Christmas commercial, we find ourselves standing in the middle of October's last stand. Leaves crunch underfoot, the calendar gets crowded, and maybe, just maybe, your soul feels a little like the trees outside. Tired, brittle, ready to drop a few things you've been holding on to. Today we're talking about letting go with grace. What it means to release what's finished and trust the pruning and believe that even endings can be holy. Have you ever noticed how trees never fight autumn? They don't clutch their leaves, trying to keep summer alive. They just let go, quietly, completely, and without apology. But we white-knuckle everything. Jobs, relationships, expectations, seasons that once gave us shade but are now just weighing us down. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3, Solomon writes this. He says there is a time for everything under heaven. And in John chapter 15, verse 2, Jesus says, every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, so that it may bear more fruit. Those aren't verses about loss. They're verses about growth. Pruning is never punishment. It's normally preparation. When God removes something from our lives, a role, a rhythm, sometimes even a relationship, it's not rejection, it's redirection. He's making room for what's coming next. But it doesn't mean it's easy. Watching the leaves fall always feels like color draining out of the world. It's beautiful, but it's also a little sad. Maybe that's what spiritual maturity looks like. Learning to find peace in those bittersweet moments. For a lot of us, October and November mark the beginning of what I like to call the squeeze season. Schedules tighten up, expectations rise, the year's end looms in front of us, and somewhere in the mix of all that, we realize we've been carrying an awful lot. Responsibilities, regrets, maybe even a bit of resentment. Let me tell you something that might sound strange. You don't have to finish this year carrying everything you started with. There's a sacred kind of courage in setting something down. Maybe it's a dream that didn't happen. Maybe it's guilt over something you can't fix. Maybe it's just the pressure to keep it all together. My friend, what if this week you let yourself lay some of that down? Like the tree that finally stops holding on. In Matthew chapter 11, Jesus says this, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Notice he doesn't say, work harder, or get it all figured out. He just says, come. Maybe the most faithful thing you can do right now is stop fighting the change and let grace carry what you can't. There's something beautiful that happens after the trees let go. The roots kind of go to work. Even though the branches look dead, the roots are alive and digging deeper. You see, the real growth happens underground. unseen. That's how God works in us as well. When life looks bare, He's often doing His best work below the surface, deepening our faith, strengthening our roots, teaching us to trust. Sometimes the season of letting go is really the season of going deeper. Although it is quieter, sometimes slower, and maybe even a bit lonelier. But it's where faith stops being a feeling and starts being a foundation. I remember once, a few years ago, when I was hunting in Alaska, and we had just harvested a moose, and we were making preparations to clean and get the meat ready for processing. It was around this time of year, and in Alaska, that's about the time when the leaves start to really do their change. And I remember walking through the woods early that morning, and I noticed the redness of the leaves. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I'm a bit colorblind, and I don't always see the vibrancy in the colors. But that particular morning, I was struck, absolutely dumb, with the redness and the beauty and the vibrancy of the colors of fall. I knew that it was Alaska, and all it takes is one really good windstorm and all these leaves would be gone. In fact, 2 days later, that's exactly what happened. But for those 2 days, I felt I was walking through a forest of fire. It was the most beautiful thing that I'd ever seen in my life. And it's a memory that I'll carry with me forever. I didn't stop and take pictures of it. Maybe I should have. I didn't do any videos. I just allowed God to be present with me and I with Him. I love nature. I love looking at turkeys and deer and moose. I love hearing the elk call in the early morning or the coyotes crying in the evening. There's something special about watching nature at work. It's where I go for my happy place. It's where I go to lay things down and let God do what He does best. So here's my invitation for this week. Go outside, find a tree that's halfway bare, watch it for a minute or maybe more. Notice how it doesn't resist the wind. Notice how it trusts the process. And then ask yourself, what am I still clinging to that God's already told me to release? Maybe it's time to let it fall. Because once the branches are bare, that's when they're ready to catch the snow and the promise of a new season. Letting go isn't losing. It's making room. And maybe that's the most graceful thing you can do before November really gets here. Thanks for spending time with me today on Grace, Grit, and Grounds. If this episode has helped you exhale a bit, share it with someone who's been carrying too much. Like and subscribe. And enjoy this season. Enjoy this time. Enjoy your moments with the Lord. There's always room for grace. The grit of faith is always there. and I encourage you to keep grounded theology a focus. Until next time, keep your mug full, keep your heart steady, and remember, grace builds what grit sustains.